Good afternoon, everybody. This is a joint work with Simonetta Mazzarino, who's there. And actually, this is much a work in progress. And it is a follow-up of a previous research that we did on the choice of making wine on the farm by what are the determinants. But basically, the issue we are dealing with is that if you look at different countries or even in the same country, in the same area, farmers that grow grapes can make different choices concerning what they do with the grapes. They can make their own wine on the farm, they can sell grapes on the market, or they can deliver grapes to cooperatives, which is quite a frequent case in Italy, in France, in Spain, for instance. So the research question, here you have for some example of what's the situation in Italy, and in Piedmont, which is our region, the number of farms, and this is the destination of the grapes in our region. 36% goes to the cooperatives, 36% on farm winemaking, 28% to cooperatives, 36% to others. So the question is, what makes a farmer choose one channel rather than another about their grapes? And of course, these different choices imply different revenues and different costs. And the purpose that we have is to try to understand what are the determinants of the destination of grapes. Without going into formal model, you can model these with the farm household models, but basically keeping things simple, if you have the choice between selling the grapes or bringing them to the cooperatives, the main determinant is probably the price that you get in the time with the risk and so on and so on. If you take into consideration making wine, then you have to keep into account wine processing costs that you have to incur, of course, the price of the wine. And among the costs for winemaking, labor costs are important, especially when you have, like it is in Italy or in Spain and partially in France, a large part of family farms. So labor can be unpaid labor. And a further element is that then there can be non-pecuniary benefits from winemaking, possibly from selling grapes or adhering to the cooperatives. In other words, you can make wine also because you are proud of your wine, and so on and so on. So how can we model this empirically? Well, our problem is that we had access to a fantastic source of information, which are the individual data from the agricultural census. But in Italy, in an agricultural census, all informations are basically technical. We have no economic data from the census. So, in other words, well, for estimating processing costs, we can look at farm characteristics and operator characteristics. We can assume that skills, education, and so on can influence the costs. And labor costs, well, here is the problem that labor cost can be subjective or an opportunity cost, depending on the relationship between the household and the labor market. And anyway, even these subjective components of the cost can be assumed as a function of observable characteristics of the operator and of the household, and of random component. The one crucial point were prices. We had the prices at the provincial level, not at the individual level. Of course, prices can be very diverse between one farm and another. And again, what we assumed is that the prices were basically there is a potential price with an average price, and then the differences are a random component in the model. So in summary, we assumed that the potential, the choice is a function of the potential prices of wine, of grapes sold on the market and grape conveyed to the co-ops, of personal characteristics of the operator, farm characteristics, household characteristics, and the random component. So assuming that the random component has a logistic distribution, we basically estimated a multinomial logit of the choice of the three different choices that were possible. The data come from, as I said, from the census. We limited, we had access to our region, which is Piedmont, northwest of Italy. Basically, there are two provinces that are relevant for wine. One is Asti, and the other, probably more important, is Cuneo. But we decided to leave Cuneo apart because Cuneo, where very high-quality wines are there, like Barolo and Barbaresco. And so there is most likely high difference individually among the farms. And so we took the prices for grapes and wines from the Chamber of Commerce. These are average prices on the, for the province, which not all varieties are included in the prices, not all wines. So we had to drop those farms where we had no information enough for the prices. And in conclusion, we have 2,927 farms. The other price that was that took a lot of time to put together was the price paid by the cooperatives. That was a direct survey among the cooperatives. 9 out of 13 cooperatives gave us the numbers, and so we had to attribute the prices. Basically, what we did is to attribute the price for each variety to each municipality covered by the cooperative. And at the individual level, individual farm, we elaborated a individual price as a weighted average of depending on the different cooperatives. These are the explanatory variables: vine area, sort of indicators of specialization, organic farming or not, computers and website, agrotourism. We had the characteristics of the operators, age, gender, education, agricultural education, professional training, being a foreigner or not, being a part-timer or not, and household characteristics. We included that because of this problem of the influence of personal household characteristics, number of children, small children and other children, number of household members, and the labor burden of the household members. And dependent variables is of course the choice between these three alternatives. Here are the descriptive statistics. Well, the interesting part is that the grapes go to the cooperative for 41% of the farms, 39% sell on the market, and 20% make wine. Here are the results of the logit, but I prefer, if someone I can show you for the discussion, but I prefer to explain by words what happens. Well, prices, luckily enough, they work in the predicted way, in the sense that each choice is a positive function of its own price and negative of the other ones. But wine price is not affected by coop price and vice versa. And in general, the effects look rather weak in the sense that if you look at the marginal effect, they say that a 1 euro change in the price well, can make the change the probability by 1–2%. So it's not very strong effect. There is some evidence of effect of specialization for the cooperatives in favor of cooperatives, both in terms of the share of grapes over the total area, and of appellation grapes over total grapes. Computer and website show a positive effect on wine. Operators characteristics, well, there is a rather weak effect of if the operator is a male on the choice of making wine. So in other words, this suggests that winemaking is still something that is for male operators. General education is not significant. There is some effect of agricultural education. And part-timers are more likely to bring the grapes to the cooperative. And there is an effect of the foreign operators for winemaking, which is probably, well, wealthy people buying farms to make wine because it's fashionable and so on and so on. And the household characteristics are not significant. So what's the upshot of this? These are very preliminary results. But what can we say? Well, the price quite obviously matter, but not so much, which means that probably the individual part of the price is more relevant in choosing one way or another of what to do with one's grapes. Some farm characteristics matter, but in that case, I'm not sure where the causality goes, because probably if you make wine, then you create a website and have a computer rather than the other way around. And there is much idiosyncratic components. And one interesting thing is that there is no evidence of household variables, which means that production choices are separable from the household and labor allocation choices of the family, which is interesting because I made some years ago a similar paper on using data from 1990, and in that case household variables were relevant, which means that maybe the sector has shifted toward a more commercial situation. The final problem is that we ask is there a hierarchy in the choices? In other words, is that farmers decide whether to make wine or not, and if it decide not to, they decide whether to sell the grapes and go to the cooperatives or something like that, or are the choices on the same ground? And we tested the independence of irrelevant alternative assumption that goes below the logit, the multinomial logit, and we could not reject, which means that at least in principle there is no hierarchy in the choices. But these are very preliminary results, so I wouldn't take it. Thank you for your attention.